After struggling somewhat at the start of this week to get back into .NET Hack development, I came to a conclusion that I can't afford to stop working on any of my active projects for longer than 2 weeks. Because if I forget what I was doing in there, I will not only waste time remembering what's what, but also I'm far more likely to procrastinate. And since I have 3 active projects now, this means that I somehow circled all the way back to switching between them weekly. I'm not guaranteeing that I will be making weekly update videos like I was doing last year, though I will try making at least one for every 2 weeks spent on a given project. And the first of these update videos is this one, because I have managed to get past all the remembering and procrastinating and made some meaningful progress on .NET Hack this week. Although I should start with the progress I made over a month ago, before I got sidetracked into making a Shogun Showdown mod. And that started with reworking how the map is displayed, switching from a painfully inefficient system that was based on existing WPF components to a custom-made ASCII display. Although just saying that the previous system was painfully inefficient doesn't quite show just how bad it was. So let me present it this way instead. This is what starting a new game used to look like. And now, it works like this. It's literally 3 orders of magnitude faster. And another difference that you can see in this comparison is the new UI. I didn't originally intend to start implementing the proper UI so early on, but what I was doing was implementing the systems for abilities and got to a point where I needed to do some testing. So I decided that I might as well implement the proper UI for the display and use of players' abilities, instead of a temporary solution that I would have to replace later. And that led to me getting sidetracked and implementing the entire bottom bar UI, complete with a notepad-inspired set of data displays at the very bottom, which shows the character name and coordinates, turn counter, zoom, region name, and region depth, although the latter 2 aren't functional at the moment. And a bar above that holds a health bar and the buttons for abilities and items. Most of it was really simple to implement. The one problem I ran into was deciding how to handle the ability buttons themselves. Sure, a lot of it is exactly how you would expect, displaying the hotkey, the number of charges and the cooldown remaining on the button, with a semi-transparent overlay that also shows how much cooldown is left, and a tooltip when you hover over it. Then, taken from Cardinal Quest, a colored outline used to display the abilities category. But that left me with a question: what about the center of the button? The identifier that would allow you to tell the abilities apart at a glance. I of course wanted something that would stay in line with the rest of the game's presentation, that is, something that could be seen as an older Windows app, so no real skill icons. One idea I had was to use low-resolution, low-color count bitmaps, like the ones used for tool buttons in the old version of Microsoft Paint, but what I settled on instead was something that wouldn't require me to do any drawing. Have you ever messed around with fonts in a Windows app? If you have, then you might have stumbled upon the Wingdings and Webdings fonts, which turn the text into a bunch of symbols. Some of these symbols would be perfect for ability icons. You've got a bomb, snowflake, sun, hourglass, candle, spider, ominously floating man in a suit, dagger, and so on. And these aren't the only symbol fonts that are installed in Windows by default. You also have a whole family of Seago fonts. Combined, there are thousands of glyphs in them. And sure, a lot of them are just 1,000 variants of an arrow, and just as many squares and circles of different description, but with a selection this large, you are bound to find something that fits any given ability. And then these symbols can be colored and rotated to give the icons even more variety. Although here lies a new issue. There are thousands of glyphs in these fonts. How do you search through them for that perfectly fitting one? Scrolling through CarMap in hopes of stumbling upon it would no longer cut it. Which then led to me getting sidetracked into creating a new app specifically for storing and sorting font glyphs, which I very creatively named Glyph Store. Although shortly after I started working on Glyph Store, the end of August came, and with it, the other sidetrack, that was my dive into Shogun Showdown modding. Once I was done with that, I quickly finished Glyph Store, which ended up being basically car map, but with the option of opening multiple phones at once and filtering by tag. Only once that was done, I got back to actually developing .NET Hack, though I ran into some resistance when trying to finish implementing the ability systems and adding a test ability. At that point, it was at least a month since I last worked on that code, and figuring out what I've done already and what still needed doing wasn't an appealing concept, to a point where I started and finished a playthrough of Haiku the Robot in the meantime. So I figured that I might have more luck warming up by implementing something that I would have to start from scratch anyway, that being the vision system, which you've been seeing working in the background footage. Though there is not much to talk about this one. Vision systems for top-down, tile-based dungeon crawlers have been done a million times before, to a point where when I asked the Claude Sonnet AI for a template of one, it gave me fully functional code that only required tiny tweaks to make it work within what code I already had. And this idea of a warm-up clearly worked, because I then returned to the ability systems, and without further issues not only finished what I started earlier, but expanded it with some extra functionality for the future use. One unique aspect of abilities in this app is the freedom of targeting. I will of course in time implement single target and various area abilities, but for now I have Wall Breaker, an ability that destroys all selected walls. And they can be selected in any way you want, using the same rules as for instance files in a folder, where you can hold down Ctrl to select multiple tiles, click and drag for a rectangle, and shift-click for a line. Although, to balance it out somewhat, the cooldown it goes on does depend on the number of walls destroyed, which is something I also really like as a concept, because while most of the time it won't come up, it lets you go all out when you decide that you need to, and, in case of this ability, carve out a huge chunk of the map, and other abilities with the same targeting will allow you to do similar things. So that's what I've got so far, meaning that right now this game is essentially a walking simulator, but next I plan on adding enemies, and with them and items in place, this will be a proper, if still bare bones, dungeon crawler. That however will have to wait, as this week I'm getting back to Fire Emblem ROM hacking, so subscribe if you want to see more devlogs, and until next time, farewell.